In the heart of an uncharted forest, far from any human settlement or map, a lone explorer named Elias wandered through the dense foliage. His boots sank into the soft earth as he pushed aside thick vines that seemed alive with their own purpose. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and damp leaves, and every step echoed in the eerie silence. He had ventured here seeking answers to questions no one else dared to ask about strange lights seen hovering over this region at night. But what he found would change his life forever. Elias wasn't just some thrill-seeker. He was a man driven by curiosity, a scientist who believed there was more to existence than humanity's limited understanding. As he moved deeper into the woods, something caught his eye, a glimmer of unnatural light piercing through the canopy above. It wasn't sunlight but something metallic, shimmering faintly amidst the shadows. Intrigued, he followed it, pushing past twisted roots and gnarled branches until he stumbled upon a sight that froze him mid-step. There she hung, a woman suspended by glowing chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, tethered to a massive tree whose bark pulsed like living veins. Her skin gleamed silver under the dim light filtering through the canopy, and her eyes burned with an intensity that made his breath hitch. She wasn't human, that much was clear, but she was breathtakingly beautiful, with sharp features framed by long, flowing hair that shifted colors like liquid starlight. "Don't leave me like this," she whispered, her voice melodic yet tinged with desperation. "I'll make you happy forever." Elias blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Was this real, or had exhaustion finally caught up with him, conjuring hallucinations out of the wilderness? But then those otherworldly eyes locked onto his, pinning him where he stood. There was pain in them, raw and undeniable, but also a flicker of hope, a spark that told him she believed he could help. He took a cautious step forward, his instincts screaming at him to run while logic urged him to stay. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to sound calm. "My name is Lyra," she said, her tone softer now, almost pleading. "And I am not your enemy." The words should have reassured him, but they only deepened the mystery. What was she doing here, trapped like prey in this alien forest? And why did she seem so certain he could save her? Lyra watched the human carefully, studying every nuance of his expression. Humans were unpredictable creatures, capable of both great kindness and unspeakable cruelty. Yet there was something different about this one, something pure in the way he looked at her without fear or malice. Most beings would have fled at the sight of her, especially given the circumstances. Instead, he lingered, his gaze steady even as confusion clouded his features. Her people, the Velari, were known throughout the galaxy for their prowess as hunters. They tracked down rogue entities that threatened the balance of ecosystems across planets, ensuring harmony remained intact. But Lyra's mission had gone horribly wrong. She had pursued her quarry too far, into a realm forbidden even to her kind. Now she paid the price, ensnared by the deadly tree veils, a parasitic organism that fed on energy and imprisoned its victims until they succumbed to despair. She didn't want to die, not like this, not when she still had so much to fight for. So she reached out, not with weapons or threats, but with words. Words had power, after all, especially when spoken truthfully. "Please," she murmured, her voice breaking slightly. "If you free me, I swear I will repay you. You won't regret helping me." Elias hesitated, his mind racing. This wasn't how he imagined his expedition ending. He hadn't come prepared for interstellar diplomacy or extraterrestrial rescues. All he carried were basic survival tools, a notebook filled with sketches and notes, and a small knife strapped to his belt. Against chains that glowed with an unnatural energy, what chance did he have? But as he stared at Lyra, he felt a pang of empathy. Whatever she was, whoever she served, she was suffering. And if there was one thing Elias couldn't abide, it was unnecessary suffering. "I don't know how to free you," he admitted, taking another step closer. "But I'll try." A flicker of gratitude crossed her face, though it quickly faded as the tree veils reacted to his proximity. The pulsating bark began to shift, tendrils snaking outward as if sensing a threat. One lashed toward Elias, forcing him to leap back just in time. He landed awkwardly, wincing as pain shot through his ankle. "Careful," Lyra warned, her voice urgent. "The Veils will attack anything they perceive as a danger. You need to find the core, the central node, and destroy it. Only then will these chains release me." Elias nodded, gritting his teeth against the throbbing pain. "Where is it?" "It's embedded within the trunk," she explained. "Look for a cluster of glowing crystals. That's the source of its power." With renewed determination, Elias scanned the massive tree, searching for the telltale glow Lyra described. Meanwhile, the Veils continued their assault, forcing him to dodge and weave as he circled the base of the trunk. Sweat dripped down his brow, mixing with dirt and grime, but he refused to give up. Each near miss fueled his resolve, driving him closer to the elusive core. Finally, he spotted it. A cluster of shimmering blue crystals nestled deep within the bark. Reaching it wouldn't be easy. The tendrils formed a protective barrier, writhing and snapping like angry serpents. But Elias had faced challenges before, and this was no different. Drawing his knife, he plunged into the fray, hacking at the tendrils with reckless abandon. Lyra watched in awe as the human fought valiantly, his movements clumsy but determined. Few beings would risk themselves for a stranger, let alone someone like her. Hunters weren't meant to inspire loyalty or trust. They were tools, instruments of justice feared by many. Yet here was Elias, risking everything for someone he barely knew. "You're insane," she called out, half laughing despite herself. "Do you even realize what you're doing?" "I'm saving you," he shouted back, deflecting another tendril with his blade. "Isn't that what heroes do?" "Heroes get themselves killed," she retorted, though there was warmth in her tone. "Be careful, Elias." The mention of his name startled him. How had she known it? He didn't remember introducing himself. But there was no time to dwell on that now. With one final swing, he shattered the crystal cluster, sending shards of light scattering in all directions. The tree veils recoiled instantly, their glow fading as the chains binding Lyra dissolved into thin air. For a moment, everything was still. Then, with a graceful leap, Lyra landed beside him, her posture regal yet relaxed. Up close, she was even more stunning, her presence radiating strength and grace. But there was vulnerability in her eyes too, a quiet gratitude that softened her otherwise fierce demeanor. "You did it," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you." Elias managed a weak smile, leaning heavily on his makeshift cane. "Yeah, well, don't get used to it. I'm not exactly cut out for heroics." Lyra chuckled, the sound musical and infectious. "We'll see about that." As they caught their breath, the forest around them began to stir. Shadows lengthened, and the air grew colder, signaling the approach of dusk. Somewhere in the distance, a low growl reverberated through the trees, sending shivers down Elias's spine. "What was that?" he asked, instinctively reaching for his knife. "That," Lyra replied grimly, "is my problem. And now, thanks to you, it's yours too." Before Elias could respond, a pair of glowing red eyes emerged from the darkness, followed by the unmistakable silhouette of a predator unlike anything he'd ever seen. Claws scraped against bark as the creature stalked closer, its movements fluid and deliberate. "Well," Elias muttered, gripping his weapon tightly, "this day just keeps getting better." Lyra smirked, stepping protectively in front of him. "Stay behind me. Let's show this beast what happens when it crosses paths with a Veilari hunter and her human companion." Together, they braced themselves for the battle ahead, united by fate and bound by promises neither fully understood. Little did they know, their journey was only beginning. The creature lunged with a ferocity that made Elias's heart race. Its claws gleamed like polished steel under the fading light, and its roar shook the very ground beneath their feet. Lyra didn't hesitate. She moved with precision, her body a blur of silver and starlight as she intercepted the beast mid-leap. Her hands glowed faintly, energy crackling between her fingers before she unleashed it, in a concentrated burst that sent the creature stumbling backward. "Stay close," she shouted to Elias, her voice firm but not unkind. Elias obeyed, clutching his knife tightly as he scanned for any opportunity to assist. But watching Lyra fight was mesmerizing. She moved like water, fluid and unstoppable, every strike calculated yet instinctive. She wasn't just fighting to survive. She fought with purpose, each blow aimed at disabling rather than killing. This wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about restoring balance, something Elias slowly began to understand. When the creature finally collapsed, weakened and retreating into the shadows, Lyra turned to face him, breathing heavily but triumphant. "That's one less threat," she said, wiping sweat, or perhaps some otherworldly substance, from her brow. "But there will be others. We need to keep moving." "Others?" Elias echoed, still catching his breath. "How many others are we talking about?" Lyra hesitated, her expression softening. "Enough to make this journey dangerous. But I won't ask you to come with me if you don't want to. You've already done more than I could have hoped." Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the weight of responsibility etched into her features. He realized then that saving her hadn't been an isolated act. It had tethered them together, whether either of them liked it or not. And despite the danger, despite the absurdity of everything, he found himself unwilling to let her go. "I didn't save you so you could face this alone," he said firmly. "Whatever comes next, I'm with you." Something flickered in Lyra's eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Then let's move. The forest grows darker, and we're not safe here." As they traveled deeper into the forest, their bond began to deepen. At first, their conversations were sparse, filled with practicalities. Which direction to take, how to avoid predators, what edible plants might sustain them. But as hours turned into days, curiosity got the better of both of them. They started sharing stories, fragments of their lives, glimpses of who they were beyond the roles fate had thrust upon them. Lyra spoke of her people, the Velari, describing their culture with pride. They were hunters, yes, but also guardians, tasked with maintaining harmony across worlds. Each mission brought new challenges, new lessons, and new scars. Yet even among her kind, Lyra stood apart. Her determination often bordered on recklessness, earning her both admiration and criticism. "I don't always follow the rules," she admitted one evening as they rested by a small fire. "Sometimes I think the rules need changing." "And do they?" Elias asked, poking at the flames with a stick. Lyra tilted her head, considering. "Maybe. Or maybe I just can't stand seeing injustice go unchecked. Back home, they call me stubborn. What do you call it here?" He grinned. "A pain in the neck?" She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Exactly." In return, Elias shared tales of Earth, its beauty, its flaws, its endless contradictions. He told her about his childhood fascination with the stars, how he'd spent countless nights staring through a telescope, dreaming of distant galaxies. He confessed his frustrations with humanity's short-sightedness, its refusal to acknowledge the wonders beyond its grasp. "You remind me of my younger self," Lyra said thoughtfully. "Idealistic, curious, maybe a little naive." "Hey," Elias protested, though he couldn't suppress a chuckle. "I prefer hopeful." "Hopeful works too," she conceded, her gaze lingering on him longer than necessary. Their moments of levity were balanced by quieter, more intimate exchanges. One night, as they lay beneath a canopy of alien constellations, Elias asked the question that had been nagging at him since they met. "Why did you say that? About making me happy forever?" Lyra stiffened slightly, caught off guard. For a moment, she considered deflecting with humor or evasion, but something in Elias's earnest expression stopped her. "It's complicated," she began haltingly. "Where I come from, promises carry weight. When I said those words, I meant them. If you freed me, I intended to dedicate myself to your happiness. Not out of obligation, but because—" She trailed off, searching for the right phrasing. "Because?" Elias prompted gently. Because you intrigued me, she finished softly. You saw me at my weakest, yet you didn't turn away. Most beings would have left me to die. You chose differently. Elias swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. He wanted to tell her that her choice mattered too, that she had trusted him when she had no reason to. But the words stuck in his throat, replaced instead by a simple, heartfelt, thank you. They fell silent after that, the space between them charged with unspoken emotions. Neither dared to name what was growing between them, a fragile, tentative connection that defied logic and reason. Yet neither could deny it either. Their journey grew increasingly perilous. The forest seemed alive, shifting and changing around them, testing their resolve at every turn. Once, they crossed paths with a pack of wolf-like creatures whose fur shimmered like liquid mercury. Another time, they stumbled upon a field of bioluminescent flowers that emitted a hypnotic hum, luring unsuspecting travelers into eternal slumber. Through it all, Lyra proved herself not only as a skilled hunter but also as a patient guide, teaching Elias how to navigate the dangers they encountered. For his part, Elias surprised even himself. His scientific mind adapted quickly to the alien environment, finding patterns where chaos reigned. He used his knowledge of ecosystems to identify safe drinking water, edible plants, and natural shelters. More than once, Lyra marveled at his ingenuity. "You're full of surprises," she remarked during one such moment. "Who knew humans could be so resourceful?" "Careful," he teased. "Flattery might get you into trouble." "Oh, I'm already in trouble," she shot back, grinning. "I'm stuck with you, aren't I?" Their banter became a constant, a source of comfort amidst uncertainty. It masked the growing tension between them, the unspoken acknowledgement that their feelings were evolving into something neither fully understood. There were stolen glances, fleeting touches, a brush of hands while passing supplies, a lingering gaze during quiet moments. Each interaction left Elias wondering if he imagined the spark, while Lyra wrestled with doubts about the wisdom of forming attachments in the middle of a mission. One evening, as they camped near a crystal-clear stream, Elias decided to confront the elephant in the room, or rather, the galaxy-spanning chasm between them. "Lyra," he began hesitantly, "what happens when this is over? When we finish whatever it is we're doing here?" She paused, her reflection rippling in the water as she considered his question. "I don't know," she admitted. "My duty lies with my people. Yours seems tied to Earth. I never expected to care about someone from another world, let alone feel this way." "This way," Elias pressed, his pulse quickening. Lyra sighed, turning to meet his gaze. "Conflicted, drawn to you in ways I can't explain. But Elias, I have responsibilities. So do you. What we're building, it's beautiful, but it's also fragile. Can it survive reality?" He reached out, covering her hand with his own. "I don't know either. But I do know this. I've never felt more alive than I have these past few days. Maybe that's enough for now." Her lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "Maybe." They sat like that for a long while, hand in hand, watching the stars twinkle above. Neither spoke of love, not yet. But the silence between them was no longer empty. It brimmed with possibility, with hope, with the promise of something extraordinary. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, unseen forces stirred, drawn to the unlikely pair and the bond they were forging. Whatever trials awaited them, Elias and Lyra faced them together, bound by courage, compassion, and the undeniable pull of destiny. The forest had grown eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd faced only days before. Elias and Lyra stood at the edge of a clearing, their bodies battered but spirits unbroken. Together, they had faced down predators, navigated treacherous terrain, and uncovered secrets about the deadly tree veils that even Lyra hadn't known. Their bond had deepened with every challenge, forged in fire and tempered by shared vulnerability. Elias glanced at Lyra as sunlight filtered through the canopy above, illuminating her silver skin and making her glow like a celestial being. She was leaning against a moss-covered rock, her arms crossed, watching him with an intensity that made his heart race. He wanted to say something, anything, to break the weight of the moment, but words failed him. Instead, he smiled softly, marveling at how far they'd come together. Then came the sound neither of them expected, the distant hum of engines cutting through the stillness of the forest. It grew louder, closer, until a sleek aircraft descended from the sky, its rotors whipping up leaves and debris. Elias shielded his eyes from the glare, squinting as the craft hovered overhead before touching down gently on the grassy clearing. "Elias!" a voice shouted from inside the ship. A figure emerged, dressed in tactical gear and carrying a rifle slung over one shoulder. It was Marcus, one of Elias's closest colleagues back on Earth. Behind him were two others, all looking relieved and utterly bewildered, as their gazes shifted between Elias and the otherworldly woman standing beside him. "You're alive!" Marcus exclaimed, rushing forward. "We've been searching for weeks." Elias felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief, joy, guilt, all crashing over him at once. He had almost forgotten what it meant to be found, to return to the world he'd left behind. But now, staring into Marcus's wide-eyed expression, reality came rushing back. This was his life. These were his people. And yet, he turned instinctively toward Lyra, who stood silently observing the scene. Her face was unreadable, though her posture betrayed tension. For all her strength and resilience, she looked vulnerable in this moment, exposed to scrutiny by beings who couldn't possibly understand her. "This is Lyra," Elias said, stepping closer to her side. His tone was firm, protective. "She saved my life more times than I can count." Marcus blinked, clearly taken aback. Okay. Hi, Lyra." He extended a hand awkwardly, which Lyra regarded with mild amusement before shaking it briefly. Her grip must have startled him because he winced slightly, pulling his hand back quickly. "She's coming with us," Elias added firmly. Lyra raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a faint smirk. "Am I?" "Yes," Elias replied without hesitation. Then, turning to address his team, he continued, "She's not staying here. Not after everything we've been through." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, clearly unsure how to process this development. One of them muttered something under their breath about protocol and alien contact, but Elias ignored it. His focus remained entirely on Lyra, whose piercing gaze seemed to pierce straight through him. Before anyone could argue further, Elias stepped toward her, closing the distance between them. The hum of the aircraft faded into the background as he knelt down on one knee, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small object, a simple ring he'd carved from a piece of wood during one of their quieter evenings in the forest. It wasn't much, but it carried meaning far greater than any gemstone ever could. "Lyra," he began, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. "I don't know what tomorrow holds for either of us. I don't know if we'll fit into each other's worlds, or if we'll have to build a new one together. But I do know this: you've changed me. You've shown me courage, kindness, and strength I didn't think possible. And I can't imagine going back to a life without you." Her eyes widened, shimmering with a mix of surprise and emotion he couldn't quite name. Behind him, the crew let out audible gasps, though Elias barely registered their reactions. All that mattered was the woman standing before him. "So here's my question," he continued, his voice trembling slightly now. "Will you marry me? Will you leave this place, with all its dangers and mysteries, and come with me? To Earth? To whatever future we create together?" For a long moment, there was silence. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her response. Lyra stared at him, her expression unreadable, though her chest rose and fell rapidly with each heartbeat. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but unwavering. "Elias," she said, crouching down to meet his gaze, "you ask me to abandon my duty, my purpose, my entire existence, all for a promise of happiness I never dared dream of. Do you realize what you're asking?" "I do," he replied earnestly. "And I'm asking anyway." A flicker of a smile crossed her lips, followed by a look of fierce determination. Then yes, she whispered, taking the wooden ring from his hand and slipping it onto her finger. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll go with you. But know this. Wherever we go, whatever we face, I will always fight for us. Just as you fought for me. Elias exhaled sharply, relief washing over him like a tidal wave. He rose to his feet, pulling her into a tight embrace as cheers erupted from the crew behind them. Even Marcus, who moments ago had looked skeptical, was clapping enthusiastically, though he still shot questioning glances at Lyra. As they boarded the aircraft together, hand in hand, Elias couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. They were stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the forest that had tested them so fiercely. Yet he knew, deep down, that their journey was only beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. As equals, as partners, as lovers bound by promises made beneath alien skies. And as the aircraft lifted off, soaring above the treetops, Lyra leaned her head against Elias's shoulder, her eyes closed but her grip firm. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future filled with possibilities beyond anything she'd ever imagined. The years that followed were nothing short of extraordinary. A blend of two worlds, two lives, and countless dreams woven together into a tapestry of love, resilience, and joy. Elias and Lyra's journey didn't end when they left the forest or even when they stepped foot on Earth. Instead, it evolved, growing richer with every passing day as they built a life that defied convention yet felt perfectly natural to them. Their wedding was a celebration unlike any other, held in a secluded meadow surrounded by towering trees and bathed in golden sunlight. It wasn't grandiose or extravagant. Elias and Lyra weren't interested in pomp, but it was deeply meaningful. Friends from both their worlds attended. Marcus and the rest of Elias's team stood proudly beside him, while holographic projections of Lyra's fellow Velari hunters beamed in from across the stars. The ceremony was simple yet profound, filled with vows spoken not just in human languages but also in melodic tones unique to the Velari. "I choose you," Elias said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "Not because you're perfect, but because you make me whole." "And I choose you," Lyra replied, her luminous eyes shimmering with unshed tears, "because you showed me that happiness isn't weakness, it's strength." As they exchanged rings, now replaced with matching bands crafted from a rare alloy found only in the galaxy's farthest reaches, the crowd erupted into cheers. Even the usually stoic Velari couldn't hide their smiles, though some muttered about how soft-hearted their once reckless huntress had become. Afterward, the celebration spilled over into laughter, music, and dancing under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights. Humans marveled at the glowing patterns Lyra demonstrated mid-dance, while alien guests sampled Earth delicacies like chocolate cake and champagne, which one particularly adventurous Velari declared delightfully fizzy. By the time the night drew to a close, no one could deny that this union was something special, a bridge between species, cultures, and worlds. Life after the wedding was an adventure in its own right. At first, adapting to Earth proved challenging for Lyra. She struggled with mundane tasks like using a microwave or navigating crowded streets, often eliciting bemused stares from passers-by when her hair shifted colors unexpectedly. But Elias was always there, patiently guiding her through each new experience with humor and tenderness. In return, Lyra introduced Elias to wonders he'd never imagined. Together, they explored hidden dimensions within the fabric of reality, accessed through ancient Velari technology she kept tucked away in their attic. They traveled to distant planets during weekends, marveling at oceans made of crystal and skies painted in hues humans couldn't name. Each trip deepened their connection, reminding them why they had chosen each other despite the odds. But perhaps the greatest chapter of their story began when children entered their lives. Over time, they welcomed 4 little ones into their family, a perfect mix of human curiosity and Velari ingenuity. Their eldest, Aaron, inherited Lyra's sharp wit and silver-tinted skin, while their youngest, Mira, sported Elias's warm smile and boundless imagination. In between were twins, Kale and Nia, who seemed determined to keep everyone on their toes with their mischievous antics. Raising these kids became a shared mission, blending traditions from both parents' backgrounds. Holidays were celebrated with equal parts earthly feasts and interstellar storytelling. Birthdays featured cakes decorated with holographic designs, and bedtime routines included tales of brave explorers, cunning hunters, and the magic of finding home in unexpected places. Despite occasional challenges, like explaining to school officials why Aaron's science project involved miniature wormholes, Elias and Lyra embraced parenthood with open hearts. They taught their children to value kindness, courage, and the beauty of diversity. And though their household was often chaotic, it was also filled with laughter, love, and the kind of warmth that made visitors feel instantly welcome. As the years passed, Elias and Lyra settled into a rhythm that suited them. While Elias continued his work as a scientist, now collaborating with intergalactic researchers to expand humanity's understanding of the universe, Lyra took on a role mentoring young hunters from her people. Her reputation among the Velari had grown. Once seen as reckless, she was now revered for her wisdom and compassion. Their home became a sanctuary, a place where humans and aliens alike gathered to share stories, ideas, and meals. Neighbors who had initially been wary of Lyra came to adore her, especially after she used her knowledge of alien flora to help local farmers grow crops resistant to drought. Children flocked to their house, eager to hear Lyra's tales of adventure or watch Elias demonstrate experiments in his makeshift lab. Evenings were spent sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery oranges and purples. Sometimes, Lyra would hum a lullaby from her childhood, her voice carrying on the breeze. Other times, Elias would recount memories of their early days together, making them laugh until tears streamed down their faces. Through it all, their bond remained unshakable, a testament to the power of love and trust. When old age finally caught up with them, Elias and Lyra faced it hand in hand, grateful for every moment they'd shared. Surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and friends from both worlds, they looked back on their lives with pride. They had faced trials that would have broken lesser beings, yet they had emerged stronger, not just as individuals but as partners. On a quiet evening beneath a starlit sky, Elias turned to Lyra, his hand resting gently on hers. "Do you remember what you said to me in the forest? That you'd make me happy forever." Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of distant galaxies. "I did, didn't I? You kept your promise," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Every single day." She leaned her head against his shoulder, content in the silence that followed. Around them, the world carried on, changing, evolving, growing. But for Elias and Lyra, everything they needed was right here. Together, they had created a legacy of love, unity, and hope, a reminder that even the most unlikely connections could blossom into something beautiful.